What up, my fellow challenge lovers? Welcome to The Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things the challenge, past, present, or future. If it's happening in the challenge universe, then we are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated challenge historian, Jacob Hollabaugh. Thank you so very, very much for being here with me today. A somewhat special edition of the podcast today as we dive into the future of the challenge show. There is a reason we say past, present, or future in that little preamble that I just got done giving that I give every single episode. Normally, this podcast most frequently deals with the present of the challenge and doing episode recaps. It recently has dealt a lot with the past of the challenge, dealing with our rewatch series, diving into old seasons, historical debates, over all kinds of stuff. But today is one of those days. The reason that we also include future in that preamble is because sometimes there is so much going on in the world of the challenge, so much news, so many announcements, so many casting spoilers and all kinds of stuff coming out that we've got to sit down and discuss where this franchise is at, where it's going, and what of these news and announcements and things, what our expectations are, what we're liking, what we're seeing, what we're not liking, what we're hearing, not hearing, all sorts of things. So that is the point of this podcast today. The first of 3 podcasts this week. Quick programming notes for you before we get to the actual agenda for today. But those programming notes are that this week we have 3 podcasts covering both the future, present, and the past. All 3 covered this week on the Challenge Historian podcast, starting with today, obviously the future, that agenda coming momentarily. Then on Wednesday, we will be dealing with the present. As All-Stars 3, Episode 6, it comes out on Wednesday. We will have our recap podcast up that afternoon. Be on the lookout for that. If you're not watching All-Stars 3, I don't know why. If you're a challenge fan, which I would assume, listening to this podcast, All-Stars 3 has been great. Continues, I assume, will continue to be great. Should be watching that pod recap out on Wednesday. And then on Friday, the Challenge Series Rewatch 2022 rolls on with Season 9, Battle of the Sexes 2. So we got the past on Friday, the present on Wednesday. And today, we started off with the future. Hit that follow, subscribe, wherever you may be listening or watching, so that you don't miss a beat, a moment of all of the great challenge chatter we've got coming at you this week. As for today's agenda, covering the future of the show, 3 specific topics that I wanted to get some thoughts out there on, that I wanted to just chat about, rant about, even if you will, because I will preface all of this with saying that a lot of the opinions that are going to be shared today are not necessarily the most positive. My expectations for a lot of things are currently lowering by the day, the announcement, the promo video. And this is a podcast that it tries absolute best to keep all of the content as positive as possible and kind of, stick to the fun stuff of the challenge and maybe leave some of the others for other people who are either more equipped or more desire to talk about those portions or to share negative opinions. If you've listened to us cover the last few seasons of the show where there's been a lot of negative fan sentiment, that I have done my best to find the best of any of those moments that some others would maybe say are low moments in the show's run. But today there is no hiding that I'm have some certain feelings about some certain news and announcements and certain things that are going on. And so we're going to get into all of them. They are related to 3 specific topics in order how we will talk about them today. The first is the Challenge USA, aka Challenge CBS, which we now know has a premiere date. And we haven't really got a promo for, but it's also coming out in now a month as of today, a month tomorrow. So I'm guessing we're going to get a real trailer sometime soon, but there's been some news about that. There's been some little nuggets of info coming out. We will discuss that. Then, second topic, Season 38, the cast and theme has come out. They have left for filming, so we have a fairly official cast list to go off of at this point, and there's just a couple specific things with that. We're not doing a full cast breakdown. We're not doing a full season preview, anything of the sort. This thing's just now filming. We're not going to see it on our screens for months, and we will, of course, do a full preview. Same with Challenge USA, as it is. Both shows will get their actual full preview. This is not some sort of stand-in for that. Just a couple quick comments that I want to get off my chest. And then the third and final topic will be the Challenge documentary, which was announced a while ago, but last night at the MTV VMAs, we got our first promo video for, and it was only 50 seconds long, but I have some thoughts. So we will share those. And the final thing with the agenda is just a quick spoiler warning for all of the discussion for the remainder of this podcast, there is a slight spoiler warning that is in need. Recap of my own spoiler preferences that also serves as basically the warning for this episode, and that is that I am totally down for all casting-related spoilers. I want to know the cast list the moment it can be made official, the moment they leave for filming, and we can officially say these people are actively right there, right now, taking part. Great. That is when I want to know and then shut off all access to any of those spoilers out there. I do not. Thankfully, I've avoided them again for these current, at least so far to date as I record this, for Challenge USA, Season 38, anything like that. But I'm open to the casting spoilers, and that's what will be open to discussion today. Again, not full cast rundowns, but with both the Challenge USA, we're really going to only talk about one specific cast member from it, and then with Season 38, a handful of cast members that are both there and are not going to be there. So that is your spoiler warning for the discussion as it goes today. That is your agenda. 3 topics to get to discussing the future of the challenge. Let's dive on in with the newest of the 3, the Challenge USA. Topic number 1, the Challenge USA. A couple news notes have come out, and I actually have one kind of, I guess it's weird to even say the words out loud. I have a bit of news about the show myself, which is something I've never done before and maybe will never do again. I'm not exactly a challenge insider or trying to be, but I do have one piece of kind of inside info to share on this show, which I'm having a weirdly hard time calling the Challenge USA because for months I've been calling it the Challenge CBS. If you're like, Challenge USA, what's that? The CBS version of the show debuting now 1 month from now with, people from Big Brother, Survivor, Amazing Race, Love Island, CBS reality stars doing the challenge, TJ hosting that challenge, which, because I've been calling it Survivor CBS for a few months now, calling it Challenge USA sounds like it's been demoted over to the USA Network or something like that, which it's not true, obviously, still premiering on Paramount Plus, but does, in a neat way, sum up kind of my feelings of the show is that it could get demoted to a lower network. My expectations, my excitement level continue to dwindle from not all that high of a starting point to begin with. But let's go quickly in order here. The first very easy thing is just it debuts July 6th, a month from today. Right now, we learned that through a honestly kind of weird promo featuring TJ Lavin and Julie Chen, back and forth between them announcing the debut of the Challenge USA and Big Brother on the same date, and that, Big Brother people are on Challenge USA, so you should watch. We get it, the tie-in, all that. TJ looks a little bit like a prisoner in the video, if we're being honest, and we haven't got a trailer or anything of that nature yet. So that's that on the premiere date and that little promo. That's the only real thing to say about that. Then, though, in getting to why my expectations and my excitement continue to dwindle, we've got to talk about the one piece of kind of inside info, I guess is the only way to say it, that I have about this particular show, which is very weird to say because that is not something I try to do or have ever tried to do or will probably ever try to do, being some sort of spoiler count or podcast or insider, getting info from, cast members, production, anything like that. I don't do that stuff. All the places out there where you can find things of that nature out. That is not my bag, nor will it probably ever be my bag, but that does not stop me from being, an active part of the community and interacting with some of the folks, cast, production, whatever, that I still may have come across something like some inside info from time to time. And I did sometime within about the last year, I came across a piece of information from an extremely reliable source, one of the best sources I could think of within the challenge community, which I cannot share. But all I can say is that I promise if I did share who or whom the person or persons were that shared this info with me, I promise you would feel the same way I do about that's a good, reliable, that's a type of person I would want to be hearing this from, to believe this, and not just some random, person who's like, oh, I got that you've never heard of, that got a call about something or something, whatever. Yeah, it's reliable person. And the thing that I found out and got very, very excited for was that the original idea for the show was not the show that we are now going to get month from now. The original idea for the show was, in fact, to bring the big four within the kind of reality competition sphere, that would be the Challenge, Survivor, Big Brother, and Amazing Race, to bring contestants from each of those 4 shows together to compete versus each other, show versus show. Challengers on a team competing against Survivor folks on a team versus Big Brother on a team versus Amazing Race on a team. And that show sounds freaking awesome. And that show sounds like something that could bring all of those fan bases together, even, the overlapping parts of that fan base, as well as those that only watch maybe one or 2 of each of those shows. Bring them all together, let them battle it out to see who's the best of the best. That sounds awesome, and that's what it was supposed to be. I know on authority that people were cast to some degree or talked about casting, that this idea was discussed, and that was kind of the original inception of how this was going to come about. And then at some point during all of that, it obviously changed, and I do not know anything further than what that original idea was, so I do not know why it ever changed, how it ever went from people from the challenge, heavy hitters from the challenge, I should say, big names from the challenge, no longer being a part, no one from the challenge being a part of it except for TJ, the host, and now it's Love Island inserted instead of the challenge, and now it's a season of the challenge with no one you've ever seen before if you've only ever watched the challenge. Only CBS folks allowed, and no CBS folks who have been on the challenge can come back. That is a weird turn. It's not quite as exciting of a show for someone like myself who is, big challenge fan and renewed Survivor fan, but not so much the other shows. And I don't know why they would decide to do a challenge without anyone from the challenge except for the host, and why they would then also decide why not keep the MTV version going. Let's have 3 properties. Let's split up the player pool, all of that. It seems very weird. It seems very odd. And it leaves me knowing that the thing we're about to get is not the original idea, and that I liked the original idea a hell of a lot more. So that's one thing, just to put out there that, I've known that for a long, long time and have never really been able to share it or felt there was a reason to share it. And this was the only time to really do so, because again, that original idea just sounds a lot more fun, honestly. But then the second thing that has come out, the actual kind of bit of news that others have shared, is that the production on this particular show maybe is not so great. Maybe they had a tough time. There's been a few different nuggets that have come out. I've had to avoid most of them because the moment you start to see some things like that, it also includes, this happened and so got screwed because of it. And I'm like, that's a spoiler too far for me. That sounds like if I read this, I'm going to learn about something that happened, but it's also going to learn about someone that gets eliminated or whatnot. Can't do that. But the one piece of it, the biggest piece of it that has been talked about the most comes from one Tyson Apostle of Survivor fame, and who hosts a podcast on the same podcast feed as John Bananas' Death Tax and Bananas podcast, which is the Ringers reality TV podcast show, where Tyson does the Pod Has Spoken along with co-host Riley McAtee. And Tyson was mysteriously gone during half of the season, recapping this most recent season of Survivor that just ended a week or 2 ago, Survivor 42. And he was gone for a few weeks and then back, and he wasn't allowed to say why, but others, like myself, I actually actively listened to that podcast as I've actively been watching Survivor. It's a great recap podcast. Tyson and Riley do a great job. And I knew he was gone because he was filming this season of the Challenge USA. It's the only casting spoiler for Challenge USA I will say. Is Tyson's on it in some way. And when he came back, they were talking about the finale of Survivor, the finale episode of Survivor 42. And during that finale episode of Survivor 42, there was a challenge where it was this big contraption had to be built. All these stages, people running around everywhere. It was super cool. It was really, really cool, visually awesome, exciting challenge, a memorable moment in a very memorable season, becoming a huge Survivor fan again off the backs of back-to-back great seasons that they're on. But he was talking about this and how unbelievable of a challenge it was. And he starts referencing, I've just got to say how great the challenge production is, how they never mess anything up. They do such an unbelievable job. They're so professional and they're so great, and that not everywhere is like that. So we should really appreciate that the challenge has that. And he goes on, kind of in paraphrasing here, but he uses the word challenge as much as he can and says to his co-host Riley, Riley can, other challenge-based shows don't know how good Survivor has it. They don't quite have the people that a Survivor does. And Riley's like, I can't think of any other challenge-based shows that you could be even talking about. And he basically compliments Survivor over and over, but does it in an obvious way to talk shit about the production he just had openly came off of with the challenge, and it was clear he was trying to signal that he did not think that the challenge production, I'm putting words in his mouth and that he never said the word second rate, but everything he said kind of alludes to the term second rate. So I don't think I'm putting words in his mouth by saying that. You can go listen to the podcast. It was the final one of their season, I think. I don't know if they did one more after it, but covering the finale. If you want to hear it, go on Reddit, search Tyson challenge. I'm sure the clip was floating around everywhere. But two things on what he said. First, it definitely sucks that the production possibly sucked. And it sounds like he's not the only one that has come out and said this. That's very sad. We'll talk about that in a moment. The second thing I do want to say, though, is he is completely right that the Survivor crew is unbelievable and does such an unbelievable job, and that crew should be applauded at length, always, every episode, every season, every moment of their day they're working. They're doing an incredible job. But the other part, I did laugh out loud listening to him say this, because he said that no one else could produce a type of challenge like what they did for this, stages challenge. And it just made me think, I don't know if you made it to the final of Challenge CBS. I don't know if you've watched too many seasons of the challenge, but have you seen one of their finals? Have you seen what they have to build? Yes, challenge productions have notably recently had some difficulties here and there, but they could have constructed that too. Also, they do some pretty big, pretty impressive stuff of their own. But it sounds like on this particular season, there's a chance that they really don't, and that adds to me continuing to be like, I don't know what this is going to be, how good this is going to be. Is there going to be a bunch of controversy with it? Does it have any chance of really taking off and gaining legs and gaining favor in the fandom? And it leaves me asking, is the same production team working on all three shows? Is it different production teams for all three shows now? All Stars, Flagship, now this new one. Did they bring people over from a Big Brother, from a Survivor, from an Amazing Race into this new show? Is it, an EP going from the challenge over, but then bringing in a new crew? And it seems like, as much as I want them to bang out as many seasons as possible of all these different shows, put the best of the best on it. If you're launching a brand new property, make sure you get it right. You have as much time as you want to launch a new property. You're not rushing to get the next season out after they finish one. It's season number one, so take your time, get it right. And it sounds like maybe that didn't happen. We will see. Maybe this is just a couple offhand comments. It doesn't represent what we eventually see to be a well-oiled machine. Fingers crossed that's what it is. But it has to say, recent history says that Tyson's comments, there's a good chance that they're pretty accurate, not just for maybe what he went through, but maybe what everyone went through, because this show, although it has the longest history of any reality competition show out there, and while I will say again, their crew does an amazing job and should all be applauded. This is not the challenge production crew sucks, but they've had a lot of kind of open disasters recently. I'm thinking the Total Madness final, which was a complete mess. The All-Stars 2 final, which was a complete and utter mess. If this entire season maybe is a little messy, if the fact that we've had how many seasons in a row, it seems like, where someone ends up pregnant and being allowed to compete on accident and then told they have to leave in the middle, and that, do they get a new partner? Do they not? Are they gone? Are they not? Handling of, situations on Total Madness, Double Agents and Spies, Lies, and Allies, where sometimes we know someone did something off the show and now we have to edit them out of the show, but now is the show ruined? And could we just say that person's not cool and show the regular show? Or could we know what they did? Or this person just got kicked off the show and it doesn't feel like they should have got kicked off. Is there something you're not showing us that maybe is the real reason they got kicked off? Or just a lot of weird stuff is what happened on recent seasons, is what I'm saying. And it hasn't been the smoothest operation. And so here's fingers crossed that this was maybe an isolated incident that, was fresh in Tyson's mind, or fresh in some of the minds of some of the other people that have started to have some rumblings online. But I don't know. But it all leads me to say that my expectations for Challenge USA are very low, which could be a really great place to be. It means it's got an easy bar to clear. But my one thing I will offer in front is that they still have time to get in front of this, and just the one way they could fix all of this is, no matter what the product we're about to see is, they should just come out right now and declare it the minor leagues. They should just come out and declare it. This is the minors. Flagship show is the majors. All Stars is, a separate majors, kind of for seniors, kind of not division. But this is the show. You come on this show, you get your shot off of coming off another show. You get to do the challenge. And if you have an impact here, you graduate to the majors and you can go on the flagship. Because otherwise, I don't know exactly where they're going. I don't know which show of any of the three they expect to be the one around for the long haul. If they expect all of them, none of them, what? But I'm getting a little nervous, more nervous day by day. I was already nervous. Now I'm getting a lot nervous by hearing, the things coming out, by knowing what this show maybe could have been in its original inception, all of that. So that's what we got on the Challenge USA for right now. Once an actual trailer gets put out, we will do some version of a full-blown, season preview of this season. I may have to enlist some help from some other people out there in the challenge podcasting community, maybe that watch a lot of these other shows and can help us learn a little more about some of these new competitors, because I certainly do not know almost any of them, of the cast that has been announced. But one way or the other, we will be covering it for sure, and we will be doing a preview of sorts. I would assume maybe we do that the week before on, the 29th of June, which is also though going to be the All-Stars finale, possibly. So I don't know when exactly we'll do the actual season preview of it, but we will get it mixed in. We will have it before that season starts once we get an actual trailer. So that is news number one, Challenge USA Roundup. Topic number two then is the flagship show will be coming back. Hallelujah. Season 38 is happening. They're filming it literally right now as we speak, or possibly back in a quarantine again, because it sounds like they were having some COVID issues to start filming, but they left for filming a week or two ago, something like that, and then had a little shutdown. I believe have restarted again once the official cast is announced by the Pink Rose Gamer Vebs of the world. I make sure to completely and utterly tune those accounts out so that I don't get anything beyond these people are officially in the cast and actively filming. I don't want to hear anything beyond that. So this is your spoiler warning again for this next section. We're going to talk a couple things about that cast and about this season, what we know thus far. So if you don't even want to know the theme of the season or who's cast in it, you don't want to know a damn thing until MTV or Paramount or whoever hosts this show eventually puts out some sort of trailer or official release, then use the show notes, fast forward to topic number 3. But otherwise, know that there will be no spoilers other than the cast itself and the general theme of the season. So know that going forward. So with that, the theme of the season, we're going to start there. And I just have a couple comments on the theme and a couple specific comments related to the cast. And that's all for this, because as same with Challenge USA, same with season 38, we'll of course be talking about this a lot all the way leading up to it, including whenever it's announced. I'm guessing this will probably, their goal is to maybe, have this ready to premiere the week after Challenge USA, which, if that starts 4 weeks from today, or 4 weeks from Wednesday, then maybe season 38, we're looking, at fall. We're looking at, if we go through July, August, September, or when Challenge USA is airing, then maybe, an October, November, December type of run for 38. Whenever it comes, we're obviously going to cover it in depth as we always do. But let's talk about the theme very briefly, just a couple opinions on the theme. The theme for this season is, I don't know if they're using the name officially, Ride or Dies, but that is the working title, or the known theme is it's the challenge, Ride or Dies, which means pairs based off either relationship couples or best friends or, big time allies in the game, whatever. You're working with someone you like. You might be in a relationship with them. You might be best friends with them. You might have worked with them a bunch on the show in the past, but they are your ride or die, and you are now literally riding or dying in the game, in theory. That's why I'm not sure they're going to want to put the word die in the actual name of the show. We will see. But the challenge, Ride or Dies, that's the theme, which at first glance, you're like, okay, that sounds pretty cool, I think. But then it has weird overtones to me of Bloodlines 2, Battle of the Bloodlines, unfortunately one of the worst seasons in history, that does feature a couple incredible performances, but not a great season in my book, not one of my favorites to rewatch, certainly. And it feels like at the time when, we're coming off Double 8, Total Madness, Double Agent, Spies, Lies, Allies, which there's been a large, portion of the fan base who has not necessarily loved the themes of late. There has been a large clamoring to bring back some of the classic themes, to then go with kind of a Bloodlines 2. And I say the Bloodlines tie because the ride or die thing does have some, teams that have been announced, like a Tori and Devin, who are both returning, and, alliance in the game or whatever. But a lot of them, most of the brand new rookie players are all, either a friend or a boyfriend or a spouse or something of a returning cast member. For instance, Casey, a returning champ, Casey Clark, is on the season. Her brother is going to be her partner on the show, assuming the ride or dies are partners and not split up into two teams, whatever. Who knows what kind of twist TJ has in store. But at the moment, we're just going to assume going in that they're all partners. And so that's what makes it feel like a Bloodlines 2 a little bit, that it's a lot of the rookies coming in are going to have direct tie to someone already in the game. And that didn't really work out as well on Bloodlines as it did on Bloodlines. Was kind of the spiritual successor of Fresh Meat 1 and 2, which are all-time amazing, unbelievable seasons who brought us unbelievable cast members. So hopefully maybe Ride or Dies is much closer to Fresh Meat, where it brings in a host of iconic characters to us versus a Bloodlines, which really didn't pan out with really anyone having a big impact of the new people that were brought into the show via that theme. So that's the theme. And the other thing is, at first, I want to like it a lot, and I love pair seasons are my favorite, and kind of mixed gender pairs might be my favorite way to go. Both the Rivals season they've done with it and the X's season, obviously. But speaking of Rivals or X's, the official account literally threw out Rivals and X's into the ether during the time it was known that casting calls were happening for season 38. They literally tweeted out stuff about, like, would you want to see a Rivals again? Would you want to see an X's again? And it was like, you've got to know your fan base. You can't do that and then not actually give us one of those, because that's what everyone wants. Everyone. If they announce Rivals 4 or X's 3, it would be huge. It would be the biggest news that they could ever announce at this point in their history. And so doing that and then giving us something else is very unfair to the new theme, that you put out this other stuff in the ether and then you're giving us this. So that's the only reason why I'm a little tepid on the Ride or Dies, is only because they themselves put out the idea of, what if we did Rivals again? What if we did X's again? And everyone was like, yeah, do that. And then they're like, all right, maybe, but not right now. We're going to do Bloodlines 2. How about that? I don't know. The cast is looking all right, and it's not totally Bloodlines, so we'll see. But you said Rivals X's, and now we're doing this. Anyways, I digress, because the real reason that I want to even talk about this cast and even mention the theme, and really the real reason I'm doing this entire podcast, I wanted to talk about all three of the topics we're going to talk about today, but I mainly wanted to just talk about one very, very specific thing, and that is this. We're going to talk about the cast now. We're not doing a full cast list. Again, that's for full previews. We're going to mention a few names, but there's one glaring omission. The moment I saw, hey, people are heading out, casting calls are over, they're heading out for filming, it's going to be the challenge Ride or Dies, and it's pairs based on people that actually like each other, either romantically, best friends, or alliances in the game, I was like, hell yeah, say no more. Cara, Maria, and Paulie, they finally are going to bring them back. They're going to allow those two to come back into the game. This is perfect. What better way could they do it than letting them come back in and actually be partners and kick ass and be the villains of the show, if that's what they wanted to edit them as, that's what those two wanted to play, whatever. They've both been clamoring to be back on the show. I have been one of many, it seems, that are outspoken about wanting them back on the show, that would be a big deal for the show, that it would really help the flagship show. I know I'm not alone, but I'm also that not everyone feels that way. There's plenty of people, probably plenty of you listening to this right now, that are like, fuck that. I don't want those two on the show. They're polarizing, and that's exactly why they would be great. And I personally want both of them back, especially Cara. I happen to just be a bit of a Paulie fan as well, but there's no argument for why Cara Maria is not, if she continues to want to do this show, which it sounds like she does, why you're not having arguably the greatest of all time female on the show, back on the show, one of the faces of the franchise in its entire history, not allowing her back. And then, so I get all pumped. I'm like, ride or dies. Yes, Cara, Maria, and Paulie. That literally, it sounds like they made the theme so that they could reintroduce these two people. And of course, they were not invited. They were not cast. And you've got to be fucking kidding me that they just blew this opportunity. That it's one thing to continue to not cast them. It's another thing to do a theme that works so perfectly to be able to bring them back into the fold, to reintegrate them in a big way and make them a big focal point and making them a big storyline and have a whole bunch of fun with it. And they just don't. And now this is the time where I have to say, I don't know the inner workings. I don't know specifically if they got a call or didn't get a call, or maybe the off chance they got a call and they had to say no. But I do know that both Paulie especially and Cara Maria as well have both been quite willing to be a part of the challenge community recently, very willing to be outspoken about their thoughts on the show and their thoughts on wanting to go back on the show and be cast again on the show. And that knowing how open they've been about all of that stuff, and the fact that I haven't seen anything from them saying like, we did get called and couldn't do it, like we're real sad, or also knowing how tied in some others in the challenge community, the podcast community, the kind of media sphere around it are with Paulie or Cara, and usually are open to they're open to letting others share some like they did or didn't, whatever. We've heard nothing, which tells me, and kind of doing a quick right before I clicked record peruse of both of their social media, it doesn't seem like they even got called. And if that's the case, it's just fucking horrible. And I'm pissed about it. I'm bummed out about it. It was such an easy win. It would add so much to the season, and they completely whiffed. And I don't have anything interesting or expert level to say about it other than it pisses me off. And I want Cara, Maria, and Paulie on this show. And the fact that they did this theme and didn't use those two as a team is an absolute travesty. On to anything else about it. The other quick things, that's really all I wanted to say. The entire reason for this podcast was just to say, you've got to be fucking kidding me that they didn't bring Cara and Paulie in for a ride or dies theme. But few other quick hits on the cast, because as we said, we'll obviously do a full season preview way down the line. We'll do a full cast breakdown. We might do a full cast breakdown as a separate episode from a season preview, the whole thing. But closer when we've got another half season of All Stars, another season of the Challenge USA before we even can really dive into this. But a few other quick hits just because we're already here. Why not? Bananas is back and Laurel is back. That's a big help to the show. Both of those people being back, big help. I'm going to try to stop saying talk more about this later because I already said it once, but this will be the last time I say we'll talk more about it later. But Bananas and Laurel being back, super duper helpful for the show. Very excited to see both of them back. Then the big kind of news, last second news was that, a ton of people fly out to the show. Not everyone then gets used, or some people have to drop, which means other people, because their partners or whatever, have to. And unfortunately for him, Josh will not be on this season anymore. He was casted, but then moved to alternate, and it does not sound like got used or has been used yet, which means Josh is not on, which I do want a quick aside. As much as I have, been one of the many that has said I would prefer a season without Josh, I also want to again take the time to acknowledge the incredible work he's been putting in and how fucking shredded he's getting and how seriously he's taking the fitness and how much ass he would kick if he gets back into this house, and I'm sure he will. It's just not going to happen on this season. So keep putting in the work, keep being an amazing human. But I am excited that he will not be on the cast, because that means that my Fessy fan club and my theory about Fessy, who is in the cast, could possibly be put to the test and maybe even proven right this season. Because I said all during last season, as more and more people, the last two seasons, started to dislike Fessy, he became the villain of the show. And I said Fessy's amazing for the show, and everyone would love him, and everyone would love that he's on the show if he was there without Josh and Casey. That it was the three of them came as such a package into the show and had been such a package on all the seasons they did together, that it was all this big brother hate, and Fessy was the one that got the most of it. Josh certainly gets plenty of his, and Casey gets some of hers as well, but she wins, and so not nearly as much. But Now Fessy's going to be there without Josh, and I think that leads to the possibility that my theory of if he was there alone without those other two, away from the Big Brother trio, and just treated on, let's see what he does in an environment without a bunch of his best friends, without this obvious alliance, see how it goes, see what people think of him. That's going to get put to the test. Very excited for that. Another thing we've got that I'm very excited for is Kayla did come back to the Flagship. She does All Stars 3. We've seen so far she's kicking ass on it so far, 5 episodes in, and clearly had such a good time, which was our wish for her on our preview of All Stars 3. As we said, we hope Kayla had so much fun, such a good time, does so well that it inspires her to go back to the Flagship, which she has done. It seems like the real inspiration was that they allowed her to bring her new, I believe at maybe, or no, they're filming it right now. I'm a dummy. Her new husband, Sam Bird, I believe, yeah, Sam Bird, that she lives with over in the UK now. I think it's probably your husband's allowed to come and be your partner. That was probably the biggest inspiration of, sure, okay, I'll do the longer film time. But I think a lot of it had to do with maybe some success that she's been having on All Stars. But she's back. I think that's a big get for the Flagship and a big get for the future of both those franchises to be able to say, hey, we reintegrate people into the world through All Stars. It doesn't have to be the oldest people in the world. And it does mean if you reintegrate and you like it, that you can also go back to the Flagship if you want. So love seeing the first time that path has happened. Also, Turbo is here. Wasn't sure I was ever going to see Turbo on the challenge again. The picture that the GamerVev and others have been using for him, Turbo's always been jacked. Turbo's always been an incredible athlete. Turbo's real jacked up these days, even more so than before, and looks like a force to be reckoned with. Excited to see Turbo back. We will see, but it was one unexpected a little bit. I thought maybe that ship had sailed for him, but also the whole, like, Turbo's back, but Kara and Paulie can't be back. Those three are friends, and it would have made it even better to have Kara and Paulie here and have an ally in the house in Turbo, and maybe there could have been a big alliance of, like, kind of a good versus evil, not those people are not evil, but you know what I mean? As far as the edit would go, they could have been a little alliance everyone hates, but they're really good and they're really hard to beat, really hard to take out. Missed opportunity. Again, as we say. And then the final things on the only comments I have so far on any of the rookies, some I know, some I don't know. Some I only know of, like, I know who Kayla's husband, Sam, is because I follow her on Instagram. I've seen pictures of him and stuff. Looks like an athletic, charming fellow. Don't know anything else. Some of them I've seen from, ways like that. Some I have no idea from different shows. I have no idea. The only thing I will say, absolute smoke shows. They definitely, guys and gals alike, they definitely went for, we're going to bring in some hot rookie class. They did that. So that's great. Hats off to all these very beautiful people they're bringing onto our screens. And the only other final comment on the cast of just looking at the rookies and basing this off these very little bit of knowledge I have about any of them, if only some of them, and their pictures and who they're partnered with. My early lean towards who might surprise and kick some ass, and maybe not even surprise once we meet them. But Amber B is back, and she's brought her boyfriend, Chauncey Palmer, Just C Palmer on Instagram, who I learned of through her Instagram and starting to post a bunch with him. Then he's a big fitness guy. I actually follow him now too. And he's a big dude who takes his fitness very seriously, and he's partnered with a former champ. And I'm just my early eye is on the two of them as an underdog team. There's going to be a lot of attention paid to the Bananas and Laurels of the world coming back in, to a Turbo coming back in, and Kayla coming back in. Obviously, I just paid them attention already in my brief little casting quick hits here, but my eye is on Chauncey and Amber as possibly some people to beat. I apologize if that's not, I believe his name is Chauncey, but I always only refer to him as his Instagram title is Just C Palmer. And so I found a way to only say that. So apologies if I got it wrong, but I think that they might kick some ass. And that is the final note I've got on season 38 and its cast for now. And then finally, I've got to quickly touch on the Challenge documentary. As a historian of the Challenge, as the guy who wants to write the record books of the Challenge, who eventually would one day like to do something like tell the story of the Challenge via book or documentary, two things that the Challenge is currently now doing on their own from their, from the official sources. which is great. That should be my dream. I mean, it is kind of my dream, but that should be my dream that I get to see something like this. And yet, the first glance of the challenge documentary kind of looks a lot more like my nightmare than it does like my dream. If you're unaware at all, they announced many months ago, they announced a book, like How to Be a Challenge Champion, something of that nature. And then they announced the people that were in it, and it got, ridiculed online deservingly because it's some of the people that weren't in it and some of the people that were. And I don't remember when that book's coming out, but it's kind of went by the wayside because then a couple months ago, they announced that there was going to be a challenge documentary, that we were going to tell the history of the show, all these in depth. And they started announcing different people that were going to LA to do interviews for this documentary. And it sounded great. And I got super excited. And then last night at the MTV VMAs, they debuted a first little 50-second promo for it. And you know how I already know that they didn't get this right? Because one of the first people I see in this is Kim Kardashian. And why is Kim Kardashian in the challenge documentary? I guess she's a super fan of the show, a celebrity fan of the show. That's great. Didn't know that. Wonderful. Glad to know someone with that kind of influence is a big fan of the show. That's amazing. But also, that's not what I'm coming to a challenge documentary to see. We got Kim Kardashian. We've got Vernon Davis. We've got Louise Hazel. Why are any of those people, the three of the 6 people we find out are even in this or commenting on in this challenge documentary? We do not need celebrities reading off cue cards, their brief, high-level, very generic feelings about the show. We certainly don't need, the idea of athletes being in this documentary to talk about what they do versus what's on the challenge. And, Vernon Davis, I don't remember if he was on Champs vs. Pros. I know he's hosted, I believe, one of the reunions. Louise Hazel is there. She was on Champs vs. Pros. She really liked it, but also Champs vs. Pros was not the challenge at all. We've talked about that at length in the past. I'm not going to do it again, but it's not the challenge. It's not the same thing. It's not even freaking close. And so why are these people a part of this? This is not what I want this to be. And I don't want to be so quick to make such a strong judgment off a 50-second promo for a 6-episode TV series that I still have my fingers crossed, and I still feel like if you had to ask me, I can guarantee you I'm going to love it no matter almost what it is, because it's still going to be about the challenge. And I know some of the people involved, I'm going to love seeing and hearing talk about whatever they want to say about the show. But it also leaves me a little bit terrified that this is what we've got for the first 50 seconds, is what they got to promote it. I got to remember that they're promoting this specifically at the VMAs. So I get this, maybe the celebrity tie-ins a little bit more so than even just the people from the shows. And they do start the whole thing with CT. So that, they're getting that right so far. But this should be, and maybe it still will be, again, fingers crossed, but it should be the coolest thing ever. Some super interesting, if they really went for it, if they just really went we really want to tell the story, we really want to go behind the scenes, we want to talk about some of the not so great moments, we want to talk about why certain decisions were made, how the show was shaped over the years. And I guess we don't have any idea that they're not going to do that, and maybe that isn't the most exciting part to lead a promo with, but it's what I want this thing to be. And so it leads me to a couple quick points on it. A documentary from the people, the subject matter of a documentary being the ones that make a documentary doesn't always lead to the best documentaries, because those people then, what they want to be in it versus what they don't want to be in it. If they're the subjects themselves, maybe they don't want to talk about some of the stuff that actually would be the most interesting of how did you work through when this ugly situation happened, when you had to make this big decision that didn't pan out. What led to that decision? What made you change and what made you get it right the next time? Those sorts of things maybe they want to avoid a little bit more. So part of me wishes that maybe this was coming from someone from the outside and not directly from inside the machine itself. And the things I want out of this are things like, I want to hear producers from season 1, 2, and 3. I want to hear why Road Rules All-Stars became a thing, and why they then decided Road Rules All-Stars should change again and it should become a new show called The Challenge, and why in seasons 1, 2, and 3 when they decided to change from, hey, this is still Road Rules-esque because they're traveling the world, to let's do it in one house, the name change. I want to hear what was Survivor's impact on the challenge as it became popular and a behemoth in this massive cultural force. What did that do? I want to hear things like, were the weird eliminations on season 8 the Inferno because Fear Factor was a huge success at that time? Which, shout out to the great, the wonderful Shane Landry for commenting. I recently posted about those eliminations on Challenge Instagram. He was on that season, the Inferno, and he mentioned that at the time Fear Factor was really, really popular and that they were probably going for that. Very insightful stuff from a man who was there himself. That's the type of stuff I would love to learn from this documentary, that this first promo doesn't lead me to think that I'm going to learn things like that. Did they totally just stop caring about Road Rules because the challenge was replacing it? Or was that just a natural thing that was going to happen and it was going to die out anyways? And then, as I've referenced a few times in all of this, are they actually going to talk about some of the ugly moments, the darker moments? There's been a lot of mistakes over the years. There's been ugly moments. There's been lawsuits around this show and nasty, unfortunate things that took place on the show. Are they going to talk at all about how you make it through when, on your whatever 14th, 15th, 16th season, a big lawsuit comes out of that? How they have to make decisions about certain cast members are allowed to come back or not allowed to come back? How they decide things about just the general idea that I've always talked a lot about. The weird thing about being a fan of this show is you're rooting for debauchery. You're rooting for drama. You kind of want the people to get drunk and act stupid, but also you don't want them to do, you want silly, stupid that you and your friends might do and are totally innocent. You don't want nasty, ugly moments when that line gets way too crossed and now there's some really horrible things going on. And we're all weirdly rooting for that, but we don't want to admit that we're rooting for that. But that's kind of the whole idea of this show originally, was like volatile, crazy, charismatic people in a house competing for money. They're allowed to drink, they're allowed to party, they're allowed to hook up, they're allowed to go to the club, they're allowed to, go to the beach on their off day, whatever, but they're also doing this game, and it's silly, but it's competitive and whatever, and it's a weird line to walk, and they do it as much as any reality television show does, of walking that fine line of promoting this dramatic, this crazy shit, knowing though that that line, you have to walk right up to it and walk along it, but going over it is a really, really bad thing, but that all the best television happens just shy of that line. Will they talk about any of that at all, or how they try to produce that and make that happen with safety measures in place to make sure nothing untoward happens, make sure that line is only walked and not crossed? I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that because, again, they're making it from the inside. So do they want to bring some of that stuff up? Do they want to talk about something like, how is the Dirty 30 situation where Camilla, has her rant, a lot of racist things are said, and, Leroy is left, dealing with the trauma of that for years and years, and then only publicly, finding the strength to talk about it a few years after the fact, in some small part because there wasn't maybe the best support system in the actual world of the challenge around it. Like, I kind of want to know about that stuff. And so will they talk about any of that? I do not know, but I'm going to keep my hopes. I'm going to keep them tempered no matter what. The moment I heard challenge documentary, my expectation went to like A+. This is the greatest thing in the world. And I was like, that's not fair to whatever I'm going to eventually see. Put them down to a reasonable expectation. But now I'm trying to not lower them either too much. But the first glance we got of it doesn't look like the greatest thing in the world. But I hope I'm wrong, and I think that I am going to be wrong, because 50 seconds showing to a VMAs audience versus 6 episodes to challenge diehard audience, I'm guessing they were pretty specific and selective about what they showed in that promo on that particular stage and platform. We shall see. But here's the hoping it's truly amazing. And whether it is or isn't, one day when I build my actual Challenge Hall of Fame, I will also do the true deep dive, the documentary, the book, tell the whole history, all this stuff, whether it's been done or will be done or hasn't been done. The way it's meant to be done deserves to be done. I one day hope to actually do it. And with that, we are done here for today on the podcast. So, got some of those feelings off my chest. Again, I apologize that I There's a lot of potentially negative feelings or trepidation that I'm feeling about some of the stuff coming out in the future, but to get out of that, all we got to do is wait 48 hours for the next episode of All Stars 3, because All Stars 3 kicks ass and it's wonderful and lovely, and I bet the next episode is going to be great. So we will be back on Wednesday to talk all things episode 6 of All Stars 3 and get back to that power of positivity that we normally love to share around here. And then we will again be back on Friday with Battle of Sexes 2, deep dive into that season 9, as the rewatch series rolls on. Also, all week long, Battle of Sexes 2 content will slowly but surely start coming out on Instagram at Challenge Historian. Follow us there if you want some of that additional content. Check out all the pods coming this week. Thank you so much for being here today. Until we talk again, peace.